Other news tonight, the Prime Minister says that the government will address any weather-related crises to determine whether they were caused by dereliction of duty or poor infrastructure. Iraqi troops and security forces edge closer to Mosul on two southern fronts, but a leader of the Shiite militia warns that the Battle of Daesh stronghold would be long. And Syrian rebels open a new front in Aleppo as fighting spreads on, the third day of a major insurgent counterattack to break the government's siege of the city. Good evening and welcome to a new edition of the news. Prime Minister Hani al-Mulki said that the government will address any weather-related crisis to determine whether they were caused by dereliction of duty or poor infrastructure and would hold to account those found to be negligent. Mulki, who was addressing the Higher Civil Defense Council at a meeting he chaired at the Interior Ministry, said authorities should be brought to account for not doing enough in case of a crisis that negligence, not poor infrastructure, is blamed for. He said if infrastructure is the reason behind an emergency, its situation should be examined and upgraded, adding that all concerned bodies and institutions should elevate their readiness to deal with severe weather conditions and respond to emergencies. He also stressed the need to benefit from the expertise of the National Center for Security and Crisis Management, which he described as a world-class institution, and enhance coordination between the center and the ministry's main operations room and other bodies. The Prime Minister commended the response of the Civil Defense Department and other security agencies during the latest heavy downpours that swept across the southern Aqaba region and triggered floods in the last few days. Governor-General of Canada David Johnston and his wife had a first-hand observation of the services and relief aid offered to Syrian refugees in Jordan during a tour on Sunday to the Zaatari refugee camp. The governor voiced his appreciation for the kingdom's effort through its various institutions to secure services to alleviate the plight of the refugees. The Governor-General said Canada, which had taken in about 35,000 Syrian refugees, understands the burden Jordan had taken for hosting growing numbers of Syrian refugees inside its borders. Johnson also checked on projects and programs currently underway in the Zaatari camp to improve the living conditions of the refugees and boost their capacity in the education sector. He called on the World Food Programme Supply Center and also joined youth and children from two centers run by UNICEF and Mercy Corps in a football game. Israeli troops shot dead a Palestinian for allegedly ramming three border policemen with his car in the occupied West Bank. Israeli police said the three officers were lightly injured when they were struck by the car near the West Bank town of Beit Omar. A police spokesman said troops at the scene opened fire and killed the driver. The Palestinian Health Ministry identified the driver as a 23-year-old from the town. Over the past year, at least 224 Palestinians have died in violent incidents in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip. Of those, Israel has identified 152 as assailants, while others were killed during clashes and protests. Iraqi troops and security forces edged closer to Mosul on two southern fronts, but a leader of the Shiite militia newly participating in the offensive warned that the battle for Daesh's stronghold would be long and grueling. A military statement said the Army's 9th Armored Division raised the Iraqi flag in the village of Ali Rash, about 7 kilometers southeast of Mosul, after recapturing it from Daesh terrorists. Further south, an Interior Ministry officer said security forces were advancing from the town of Al-Shura, recapturing from Daesh yesterday along the Tigris River Valley towards Mosul, 30 kilometers to the north. Their battle for Mosul, still home to 1.5 million residents, could be one of the toughest in a decade of turmoil since 2003. Meanwhile, Kurdish Peshmerga forces prepared to storm the Iraqi town of Ba'ashiqa, northeast of Mosul, as part of operations to drive Daesh out of the area. Iraqi troops and Kurdish fighters have cleared dozens of villages as they press towards Mosul for an offensive against the Daesh's last main stronghold in the country. The Peshmerga said in a statement they had cleared at least 28 villages north and east of Mosul since the start of the offensive. Syrian rebels opened a new front in Aleppo as fighting spread on the third day of a major insurgent counterattack to break the government's siege of the city, and each side accused the other using poison gas. The rebels are seeking to end the siege by seizing government-held areas of Aleppo in an effort to link the city's rebel-held east with rebel-held rural areas to the west of the city. Syrian state media said militants had fired shells containing chlorine gas at Al-Hamdani residential area of the government-held western part of the city, while the rebels denied that and said government forces had fired poison gas on other front line. In the meantime, Syrian government forces and their allies released a video to show their units heavily bombarding an area of rebel-held western Aleppo. The Syrian army said it had bombarded the family house area, which the rebels had taken control of while trying to break through from the west of the besieged rebel-held eastern Aleppo. A Syrian military source said that the army and its allies had also thwarted an extensive attack on south and west Aleppo. An air raid by an Arab coalition killed 60 people in Yemen, including inmates of a prison near the city of Hodeidah. The Saudi-led alliance that conducted the raid said it struck a central security building used as a military command center by the Houthi rebels in its fighting. Local officials said the prison lies within a security complex, but that only prison guards were present during the airstrike. A statement by the coalition said the building was used by Houthi militia and the forces of the deposed president as a command and control center of their military operations, referring to former President Ali Abdullah Saleh, a Houthi ally. The Saudi-led coalition has been fighting Yemen's Houthi movement since March 2015 to restore the internationally recognized President Abd Rabbu Mansour Hadi. 26 years after being forced from Lebanon's presidential palace and into exile by the Syrian army, Michel Aoun is set to be elected head of state tomorrow, backed by many of his old enemies. He will fulfill his long-held ambition thanks to the unlikely endorsement of Sunni leader Saad al-Hariri, who waged political war for years against the Shiite Hezbollah movement and its allies. Hariri is to become prime minister under the New Deal, which he hatched with Aoun. If Aoun does not secure the two-thirds majority required to win in the first round, he is certain to prevail in a second, where he needs 65 votes in the 128-seat chamber. His opponent is Slimane Frangieh, a fellow Maronite Christian who is unlikely to command much support. A powerful earthquake struck Italy in the same central region that have been rocked by repeated tremors over the past 2 months, with more homes and churches brought down but no deaths reported. With thousands already made homeless, a leading seismologist warned that earthquakes could go on for weeks in a domino effect. Here's more.
Frightened nuns flee for safety as another powerful earthquake shakes central Italy. It's the same region where almost 300 people were killed by an earthquake in August. No deaths were immediately reported this time around because many people had already fled the area. The 6.6 level quake hit at 7:40 a.m. local time and was felt across Italy, including in the capital Rome, where authorities shut down the metro as a precaution. It took down buildings around its epicenter in the walled Umbrian town of Norcia, like the centuries-old Basilica of St. Benedict, leaving just the facade standing. Residents and clergy prayed together in the town square. And in the city of Viso, the quake exposed coffins at the local cemetery. Within hours of the earthquake, Italian Prime Minister Matteo Renzi vowed to rebuild the structures damaged in the series of quakes that have rocked central Italy in recent months.
Dominika Shibulkova completed a remarkable debut at the WTA Finals when the Slovakian world number 8 stormed the victory with an unlikely 6-3, 6-4 win over world number 1 Angelique Kerber. Shibulkova lost her first 2 round-robin matches before beating Simona Halep to squeeze into the semi-final, and her victory matches defeat of Agnieszka Radwanska. Her first defeat at this year's tournament was a tight 3-set loss to Kerber, but she turned the table to the German in the final to register the biggest victory of her career. The World Rally champion Sébastien Ogier claimed his 6th win of the season at the Wales Rally. The Frenchman ended up 10.2 seconds ahead of his Estonian rival Ott Tänak to make it the 4th year in a row Ogier has won the Welsh title. Hyundai driver Thierry Neuville finished 3rd on the day and is still fighting it out to be 2nd with Andreas Mikkelsen. And finally, relatively cold in most regions for the rest of tonight, with northwesterly light to moderate winds. Fair conditions prevail across the kingdom tomorrow, with some low clouds and northwesterly light to moderate winds. The Gulf of Aqaba should expect relatively hot conditions tomorrow, with northerly moderate winds and slightly high seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. And to end the news is a recap of our top stories. The Prime Minister says that the government will address any weather-related crisis to determine whether they were caused by dereliction of duty or poor infrastructure. Iraqi troops and security forces edge closer to Mosul on 2 southern fronts, but a leader of the Shiite militia warns that the battle for Daesh's stronghold would be long. And Syrian rebels open a new front in Aleppo as fighting spread on the 3rd day of a major insurgent counterattack to break the government siege of the city. And with this we come to an end. I'm Faraj Looney. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.